Alright everyone, hello and welcome to the Career Conversations panel in Linguistics and Cognitive Science. My name is Serena Soho. I'm the Employer and Alumni Liaison from the Career Center. I'm going to ask all of our panelists just to introduce themselves, who you are, what your role is, what your organization is, and a little bit about the roles and responsibilities that entails.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Press. I graduated from Cognitive Science. I did concurrent education too, so when I graduated from York I had a degree in Cognitive Science and a degree in Education. So I taught for a bit. Currently I work for the Ontario Public Service. So I started off with them in August of 2014, and my home position is a senior policy advisor. And currently I'm on a secondment, which means I kind of have a 1-year break from my home position where I get to try something new. So my current position is a policy analyst in an area where we work on professionalism, teaching policy, and standards regulations. So that means that we develop policy and we work with the Ontario College of Teachers to help ensure that regulations are up to standards in Ontario, and also ensure that, professionalism is as we would hope it would be, and that we're helping students ultimately achieve their aims throughout the province. So we would be working on things like different PowerPoint presentations, briefing senior management. Basically, my role is to take a ton of information, help synthesize that, take what key points would be most relevant for decision makers to then make the decisions that affect policy across the province, so that would help teachers across the province, hopefully.
My name's Julie Donor. I'm an upper year PhD student at the University of Toronto. My specialization is in comparative syntax. So syntax is sentence structure, as I'm sure many of you know. And the comparative part means I look at how it varies across languages. My roles would include, of course, writing my dissertation and working on other research projects. I've also worked as a TA and as a course instructor. I've helped organize workshops and conferences and attend them as well. I've sat on departmental committees. Right now I'm sitting on a search committee to hire a new professor. And almost actually anything a faculty member does except supervise graduate students for obvious reasons.
Hi, my name is Amy Lowe. I graduated from York University from the Linguistics program in 2015, and I also graduated with a TESOL certificate, so teaching ESL to people who need to learn English as well. And then I furthered my education at Durham College through the Communicative Disorders Assistant program. Since then, I've been working as instructor therapist. So we work with a lot of children who have special needs around age 3 to 12. With the types of programming that we do, we work on social communication, fine motor, gross motor skills, reading and writing, other skills that you would have to, that you would teach as well. And that's my current role.
My name is Chris Janka. I graduated in 2006 from the Cognitive Science program. After that, I went to business school to get an MBA, and then made my way into the working world. Right now, I'm employed with a company called Parker Hannafin. We make motion control parts, so pretty much anything that moves, we have a hose, a fitting, a pump, something like that inside of it. My role with the organization is as a project manager, on paper, I suppose. But that entails actually selecting the technologies that we use in the organization. And in this case, my focus is advanced technologies. So I look at things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics.
I'm Adrienne Miranda, and I'm a speech-language pathologist at the Toronto District School Board. I graduated from York in Linguistics in 2011, and then I went to U of T to do my master's in speech pathology. So I work with 7 different schools right now, and I typically work from kids K to 8, mostly in the primary grades though, and I'm in the classroom, I'm working with teachers, I'm working with the community, with parents, on every aspect of communication. So I run programs, I run groups for kids for a variety of communication needs, I do assessments on their communication skills, I run presentations for teachers. A big thing we're doing this year is a literacy project where I'm in a grade 1-2 classroom and I'm working with the kids and the teacher on co-instruction so that we can boost kids' reading skills wherever they are. Because one of the mandates of the board is to have all kids reading by the end of grade 1, which is a huge task. So it's a great role and I really love it.
I'm Jill Clemons Baartman, and I graduated from York in '89, and I'm looking at that date going, youch. After graduating from York in linguistics, I went on to Calgary and did a master's in neurolinguistics. And then I was the first student admitted to the University of Toronto in a cognitive sciences PhD. While I was working towards that, I discovered speech pathology and fell in love with the applied linguistics aspect of it. My background is with adult neurogenics, so stroke and Alzheimer's. But when I was in the program as a speech pathologist, I discovered the 3-foot world and fell in love with kids, and I haven't gone back since. I have worked for a number of different mainstream organizations, but I've always had a private practice in the background, and that's been my full-time employment for about 25 years now. In private practice, you do everything from fixing toilets to fixing kids. And in my practice, I'm really fortunate. We have a nursery school for kids with special needs as well as a private practice. And so we get to see kids right from infancy, and we maintain our relationships with them through into adulthood. So I've seen some of my clients for that 25 years, from diapers and barely being able to sit up to young adults with special needs, trying to find and secure full-time employment, because communication morphs and evolves over the years, and what that looks like at different ages and stages is highly variable. I've also been really fortunate to be involved with and publish research through the University of Toronto and a number of affiliate sites. I'm a clinical educator, and I was just mentioning that at this point our estimate is we've had over 400 interns in the practice in the last 25 years. So never losing touch with the current professionals who are developing and nurturing their skill sets coming into the workforce.
I'm Tiffany Anderson. I graduated from York University in 2015 with a psychology major and linguistics minor. Currently, I work for a company called Speech Specialists, a private organization where we see we serve the pediatric population. I typically see children between the ages of 1 and 12. Me specifically, of course, we see kids between 1 and 18 years of age. I see children who are all on the spectrum, like on the spectrum disorder. They have spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder. Children who have an early language delay, like infants who have not hit their early milestones, and parents have requested us for intervention. And I also see school-age children who have articulation disorder, like articulation errors. So I help them with specific sounds that they have trouble producing. I also work with parents and train parents on how to facilitate the goals at home, providing in-home programming, as well as showing them different activities that they can do to help facilitate all of the goals that we've been working on. I also work for another private speech therapist, so mostly I just work privately.
What are some of the most enjoyable aspects of your role, and what would be considered some of the most challenging aspects? And thinking more in terms of students, again, who are considering taking a similar career path to you.
One of the most enjoyable parts of this field is, of course, working with the kids. I love working with kids. I love working with the babies. That's like my favorite part. Sometimes most challenging parts are working in home. Because of course the kids are comfortable in their home environments, and it's kind of hard to regulate their behaviors in certain areas of their homes. Sometimes, when they're not in the mood, it's because it's nap time and they don't want to be doing therapy. So sometimes it's nice to have a clinical setting to do therapy in, but in home you don't really have that option.
I think some of the most enjoyable aspects of my context are that I have a really great balance between therapy and assessment. Because I'm in private practice, I'm not just in a consultative model, I'm in a hands-on model. So I would say probably 20 to 30% of my time is spent in assessments, and 70 to 80% of my time is spent in treatment. And I love having my hands on and doing the work. That's just fuels my fire. And it's also fantastic in our context. We have no red tape. So anybody can refer, anybody can start. I try to keep a no wait list scenario happening, so kids aren't waiting 6, 8, 12, 24 months to get services. And we don't have blocks, so you don't just see a child for 6 weeks and then take 3 months off and then 6 weeks and 3 months off. We work with families so long as they need the services. So that involvement often is multiple years. So understanding really from an inside perspective what is involved in being a parent of a child with special needs, being a family of a child with special needs, and that growth and development and change over time, we have a really unique opportunity to serve our families, and that's absolutely the most rewarding, is just seeing everything come together over the years. The most challenging is that those same families are usually the families that are falling between the cracks and bumping into the limitations of the systems. So trying to help them navigate and negotiate and advocate is a big part. We do a lot of education and empowerment to support the families in their quests to achieve the dreams that they have for their children.
I think for me, one of the best parts, but also one of the most challenging parts, is the collaboration aspect. So in the school board, you work with a lot of different people, the psychologist, social worker, teacher, parent, child, sometimes outside agencies. So there's lots of room to collaborate with all the people at the table for the child. And I really love that because, being a speech pathologist, I have one lens on how I can help this child, but then there's lots of room to talk to other professionals about what they can do and how we can do it together. And you really feel part of a community, actually, in the school board. I actually work in this area. I work at Jane and Finch, and I have 6 of my schools here. And I've been there for 3 years now, so I really feel part of the community. They know me, they know what I do, so I can really work effectively with everybody at the school. And at the same time, it's challenging because, you have a lot of people that you have to negotiate with on an ongoing basis. Sometimes teachers might not want you there in the classroom or might not see the value of what you can provide. And often the same way, like we headbutt on some issues that we feel are dear to us. So it's often about like the give and take of building a relationship and sustaining that when you know that you have to work for that child, that student.
The best part about my job is creating new things. So trying to see something that you had a vision about and you thought this could possibly work, and actually seeing that come to fruition. But I agree, collaboration can be both the positive side of that and also the challenging side. So oftentimes when you're building a project or implementing a new technology, you're working with a pretty small team of people who understand and are really committed to making this work. And then once you roll that into a wider business context, oftentimes you're met with people who are resistant to change, people who don't quite get the value. And so you're certainly having to take the project that you started with and invite others to become a part of it. And sometimes that can mean it goes in a very different direction than you first thought, but collaboration is the key when we're implementing new tools for people.
The most enjoyable aspect would be to see my clients learn and acquire a lot of skills. It takes a lot of patience because, again, you're working with kids with special needs, and the population that I work with, we deal with a lot of challenging behaviors, potentially physically aggressive behaviors as well. So that would be also the challenging part of my job as well, the physical demand that it can sometimes require. Sessions can last for around 3 to 4 hours at a time. So a lot of energy is used during that time. I've also learned about the importance of self-care and job burnout through this position, which I had not really considered or really prioritized in other positions. But both enjoyable and challenging aspects, I would say, would be the learning curve that I had to overcome just starting off in the job. Because I don't come from a behavioral background necessarily, but it's still in related field, so that would be my challenging and enjoyable aspects.
But for me, my favorite part is that moment when you have a new idea and you're excited and you want to see if it's going to work. But I don't like the part where you have to actually go and prove that it works. And I also like the part at the end where you figured it all out and you've given it to someone and they say, "Ooh, this is neat." I like that part because, they're telling you it's neat. But the in-between part, not so much. In terms of teaching, my favorite part is when students get excited about the material or when they're asking really good questions, and I want to encourage them in that. I think the most challenging parts are when you're stuck or when it takes longer than you expect. And this happens a lot. I like to say original research is like a house renovation. So if any of you have watched a house renovation show, you know they always have like a plan and a budget, and it always takes longer and costs more money than their plan and their budget. And original research is kind of the same way. So in a renovation, you like take down a wall and you find there's asbestos or it's not up to code or something. In original research, you start digging and things aren't as you expect and things take longer. And this is really hard when you have to ask questions like, this thing that I've already invested lots of time and money in, what if it's not even a valid question at all? What if that was, I just have to throw it out and start over? And that's really hard. And it's also hard not to take it personally sometimes, because it was your idea. And also the same when you get the negative reviews, which happens a lot, even to the best, because, I mean, your project needs to go through several stages before it gets to that end stage where it's going to get good reviews. And in that process, and it's again hard to not take it personally, and I think the effects, like I think being in grad school is really hard on your mental health because of these things.
So in terms of the challenges, I think it was Jill over there who mentioned red tape. She said, I have no red tape. Well, I'm the opposite. My job is full of red tape because I work for the government, right? So you have to understand when you're working for a massive organization, there's bureaucracy that comes with that, right? So that's one of the challenges of my job. You want to get something done immediately. A large organization is probably not the place for you, right? Because things take time, especially since you're representing the public. You want to make sure that you're taking adequate steps. Another thing, I suppose, related to that that's kind of challenging sometimes is you have no ownership over your work because you're working for the public good. It's not about recognizing you as an individual and your accomplishments in this and that. It's about what you're doing to contribute. So it's very focused on the work that you're doing as part of a team. So going back to the collaboration that a few people have mentioned, which is great on the one hand, but sometimes can be a bit challenging because it's not your work, it's not your project, even though you might be the lead on it. So that kind of segues into what I really like about my work. So I really like the fact that there is a ton of collaboration, and I really like the fact that within government you've got, I work for the provincial government, so there's tons of different ministries, right? And there's also something called a secondment, which I mentioned earlier. So right now I'm on a 1-year secondment. You have so much room to move around, to try different types of jobs. So previously I was working in labor relations. Now I'm working in more kind of pure educational policy. There's also the Ministry of Health, right? So if you have an SLP background and you're interested in that, you could go over there for a bit. So I mean, of course, you have to apply, you have to get in, but there's so much opportunity. Another thing I really like is after graduating from York with those degrees and then teaching for a few years, I went back and did grad school. So I like that my job allows me to actually directly apply a lot of the skills that I learned through these degrees, but also through what I learned in grad school. So there's that kind of practical application as well as a theoretical balance, right? Because especially with CogSci, you do so much reading, you do so much analysis, right? And you learn so much theory. So like machine learning, I think Chris had mentioned, and things like that. Sometimes those concepts really, really help. And I suppose on the practical front, what I really, really enjoy about my job too is the fact that I can see a direct impact, but not on a one-to-one scale, which I actually kind of miss sometimes in terms of teaching, but on a provincial scale. So I've worked on legislation and regulations that affect the entire province. They affect the education sector in the province. So that's kind of a cool thing too, when the work that you're doing has really far-reaching consequences and you can see that it's helping a ton of people. I find that really, really rewarding.
What experiences prove to be the most beneficial to you when it comes to successfully either finding your path or for successfully landing your first job?
In terms of graduating from York and getting a job, as I mentioned, I did concurrent ed. So my first, I suppose, adult full-time job was actually a teaching position, and it's because I had gone to a teaching fair where you had to either have a bachelor or master's of education or be about to graduate. So in that case, it was slightly different. In terms of the policy world, though, what I found really helpful was there are different types of internships. So I would really recommend looking into internship programs. So like the Ontario internship program is how I actually got a job with the province. Co-op positions are really helpful too. So in terms of the types of skills and the way that I sort of segued into the working world, some of the experiences and skills that I found really helpful would be experiences like the CogScires here. You got COSA, right? Like the Cognitive Science Students Association. So I was part of that. I think I was the social coordinator or social director. I love like event planning. So things like that really help because you're actually practicing a ton of different skill sets when you do that. You're also building a network when you do that. And so when you first start off in a full-time adult working world, you might not necessarily be able to say, oh, you know, I've got 5 years experience doing X, Y, Z, but you can say, well, I have this volunteer experience and I think it's really applicable because. So I did a lot of that. I did a lot of volunteering and I also had a lot of part-time jobs. So I was able to sort of craft together different experiences and think more in terms of competencies. So instead of not applying for a job because you don't have 2 years experience, look at what the skill sets are that they're looking for and think to yourself, well, I've done this, so even though it's not exactly the same, can I relate to it? And if so, then figure out how to sell yourself. So I became very good at doing elevator speeches. So I think that that also helped me because when I first got into government, I came in through the Ontario internship program. I think I was the only person in my cohort who didn't have the Master's in Industrial Relations or the undergrad degree in Industrial Relations. I had done a different type of grad school, but I understood that what I had studied and what I'm capable of was applicable. So I would say that that's something to consider too. Don't just think to yourself, I don't have this exact experience. Think to yourself, how can I sell the experiences that I do have and the skill sets that I do have?
I haven't officially had a full-time job yet because I'm still in grad school. So I'm going to talk about the admissions process into grad school, which I think is kind of the equivalent. And I haven't been on the other side of that yet. So one of the biggest things you can do is go to the faculty, and they have been on the other side of that, and ask for their advice and get their feedback on your application materials and stuff. So a grad school application will normally include a statement of interest or a plan of study or something like that, where you write out like what research you want to do over the course of the degree. And I think mine wasn't very good. I can tell you that right now. My master's application, it was not very good. With that, you want to show that you're capable of doing research, and you want to show it, not tell. Okay, you want to prove it. You're convincing academics, so they want proof. So the best way to prove it is to present a plan that works, okay? Not to be like, oh, I love linguistics or I love cognitive science, I want to do it all the time. Everyone who's applying to grad school can say that, right? Present a plan of what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be the plan you do, and it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why you're applying to grad school, not graduating from grad school. But come up with a question or something and get feedback on it. So you can go to your professors and get feedback on it. That's a really good idea. But in my experience, often you'll get minimal feedback from the professors because they're super busy. So if you know anyone who's a grad student, go to them and get them for advice because they'll be like super excited to give you advice, and they'll spend a lot more time giving you feedback. And also by the time you're in a PhD, you maybe done a master's one and a PhD one and some grant applications, and you actually know how to do it pretty well, even though you haven't been on the other side. In terms of what opportunities you can do as an undergraduate student that will help your application other than what you write up at the end when you apply, try to do some original research. So this could be ask any professors if they need a research assistant or want a research assistant, or ask if there's any work study opportunities, or do an independent study. So that's basically when you go to a professor and say, I want to learn more about this, and there's not a course on it, and then you'll like develop a reading list and go through that reading list and ask some questions. And another thing you can do is attend or even present at a undergraduate conference or a not undergraduate conference, but those are scary, I understand. So I know the University of Toronto has one every year.
Through the unexpected connections that I found through my previous jobs and through people that I've talked to, I've done a lot of volunteering as well. Anna said that volunteering is very helpful. What I did was I volunteered through attending conferences as well, so take advantage of the fact that you are a student. You can sit into sessions that would have cost maybe $300 just for being there helping with the registration desk, or there to be a door monitor for anything that they need for the smooth running of the conference. For me also, for unexpected connections. Before I landed my current job, I went back to my elementary school, and I was able to help them through with office assistance and also being a supply teacher. So talking with them, I also got a phonics tutoring job as well. I also talked to my family friend who owned a tutoring center, and he gave me the opportunity to create enrichment programs for middle school students. An opportunity that I wouldn't have discovered had I not reached out to the family friend as well. And also I got the opportunity to work with an adult who decided to do a career change and wanted to help run Captain's Boil, which is the seafood restaurant. Her English was not that great, and she wasn't comfortable speaking to her customers in English. So I was able to design an intensive program that way, just specifically for her, something that she wouldn't be able to access through other teachers as well. So through unexpected connections, talking to people that you may have already known, and also volunteering, look for any volunteer opportunities either through the Career Center, conferences, other organizations.
In my student life at York, I was also involved in things like the Cognitive Science Students Association, the student council through the college system, and that really helped me to get out there and get accustomed to networking with people, meeting new folks and talking to them about what my goals were and how they might be able to help me along the way. It's actually pretty surprising. You do meet tons of people in life where you express an interest in something, and even though they don't know you, they'll help you. So I think it's very important to understand what your goals are, communicate them to others, and accept that help when it's present. Upon graduating, I didn't really know what to do with a cognitive science degree, and so I decided I would go back and get that other education piece. I still didn't really have an answer to the question, but what can you do? I mean, you have a cognitive science degree, you have a master's degree in business. What is the value that you bring to the table? So that was a very expensive lesson that I've just now shared with you. So you don't have to necessarily do the grad school thing. It ended up that I needed to get into networking in a big way. I needed to be able to sell my skill set. So a lot of the people that I was competing with either had sales experience or a marketing education, and that spoke through the application process to recruiters. So when they saw cognitive science on my degree, oftentimes they didn't know what to do with me. So I got kind of put into this pile, and then the other people that were more straightforward candidates went into this pile. So I changed up my strategy altogether, and I stopped going through the front door with organizations. And I decided I'm going to just go out and meet people and see, instead of trying to apply to a job that's already online and somebody's already thought of it, what jobs can I create? What jobs can I just propose to someone that it's going to provide value to your organization? So my first job, I would say, post-graduate school was definitely one of those. Since then, I've had one job with an actual written job description, and the rest of them we've kind of figured out along the way. So I definitely think in this line of work, the cognitive science in particular, maybe linguistics, there's a little more transparent career path. But for the cognitive science, don't be afraid to talk to people, and don't be afraid to pitch something that's crazy and off the wall. They might just say yes.
Does anyone know about the York International Internship Program?
I did that.
I did that too, and it was awesome. I think the applications might be out now, actually, but it's an amazing program. 3 months in the summer, you get paired with a site across the world, and you get to go there and work there for the summer, and it's amazing. I went to China, not in a speech-related aspect, but definitely it was in a teaching aspect, and that's helped me in my role now. But I encourage everyone to take a look at the website, York International Internship Program. If you Google it, you'll find it. It's just an amazing experience that York offers, and they do give a bursary as well, and I think they still help with your flight costs, so there is some sort of money that you get, basically. But I found that international experience really helped with getting me into grad school. to do my master's, but also to my job at the TDSB, because it was such a multicultural, city, right? And so they really liked seeing that they had some international experience. What else helped was just volunteering everywhere. I took a whole year off after my undergrad just because I was really tired. Like, I couldn't do any more school. I couldn't even think of getting into master's right then. So I'm really glad I just took that year to focus. I volunteered at like 5 different places in different aspects of speech pathology because I wanted to try everything out. So I didn't just want to go into the field having one view. I wanted to just see what was out there. And I also did volunteering at U of T in the research department. And that's your in kind of thing, right? So they know you, the professors will write you a letter. They're really great. It's good to see more of a research side to SLP. So yeah, just volunteer, call people up, call the heads of the TDSB if you want. Like, just try to get as much information about these agencies as you can. And at least in my department, we take volunteers all the time.
One of my favorite things at York is that it's super international. So while I was here, I also did that, found it super helpful. There was a language partners program. I'm not sure if that still exists, but it pairs you up with students from Hong Kong who are training to become teachers. I went to Hong Kong and visited them like 2 years ago, so this is years later. There's also programs like Learning from the Past, Teaching for the Future, through which I met one of my friends who's still one of my best friends today. And so when Chris was talking about networking, don't think of networking only in terms of professionals. Think of it also in terms of your friends. When you vocalize what you want and what you care about, like he was talking about, things happen. So like I had mentioned to my friend, hey, I'm coming to the end of a contract. So she was flipping me jobs if she saw stuff that she thought was relevant. She flipped me this ad for the Ontario Internship Program. I applied for it, and that's how I got in. But I wouldn't have met her if it wasn't for this International York program. York actually paid for this international program where we could go to Germany and Poland and do this research on the Holocaust, and I made a documentary film out of that. So the international stuff is so key too, like the volunteering, the international, the networking. So I'm sorry to keep speaking, but that just reminded me about the whole idea of networking through friends too, not just thinking about professional contexts.
If you had asked me in '89 what I was going to do with the rest of my life, I could not have given you an answer. So for me, how I got to where I am today only makes sense looking back, because I really didn't have a clear path forward. And that's part of my makeup. I'm totally ADHD. I bounce all over the place. I get bored. I try something new. I dabble. It's turned out to be one of the best competencies that I have, is this ability to integrate across so many different areas. So where I am today is as a result of taking all these individual strands and twisting them together into a really strong rope. So there were 2 main branches. One was creativity and resourcefulness. If it didn't exist, just like Christopher, create it. Don't take no for an answer. If I had an idea, pitch it. The other is being absolutely determined. When you see something that you want, set your sights on it and bite onto it really hard, and do everything in your power that you possibly can to get that. Because if you show that much determination, you're going to make everyone else that's in that application pool pale in comparison. So 1 is create it, 2 is go for it. And you're going to have a really interesting future.
I think everybody else touched on this. Volunteering, I find, is the best and most rewarding experience that you can have when you're thinking about going into a career. I volunteered with Grandview Children's Center in the Durham region for 2+ years, and that really solidified that, first of all, pediatrics is where I want to work, and also that I want to work in the field of communication disorders. Prior to that, I was interested, but I didn't know how much I was interested in it. So volunteering, getting experience working with the SLPs in the company, as well as other professionals in the organization, like physical therapists and occupational therapists, audiologists, social workers. You get exposed to all of that, and say you go in wanting to learn about SLP or a CDA position, you might come out wanting to be an audiologist. You might come out wanting to be a physical therapist. So volunteering really opens your eyes to like different opportunities that you could have. Also, the Communicative Disorders Assistant Program allows you to get 500 hours of volunteer experience. So that could be either in audiology or or in speech therapy. So again, you can ask them like whether or not you want to try out stroke rehabilitation. You can work in a school board, you can work in a clinic, you can work in an audiology clinic, so that also gives you a lot of opportunities. So when you're presented with opportunities like that, you shouldn't just go into things that you're comfortable in, but try something new because you paid for it, it's part of your tuition, you might as well try something new.
The value of volunteering, but I also want to be clear, I know most of you are undergraduate students, your time is still worth money. So as long as volunteering is getting you experience, getting you the right connections and those sort of things, by all means, if you're getting value, pursue it. But don't think that that means that coming out of school, you're not qualified to do things. That was one of the lessons that I learned over my career. I wished I had valued my time better and understood the value that I brought to the table when I was starting out. So by all means, if you get a paid job that you absolutely love, go for it.
So networking is a word that some people fear, and I guess it depends on what you think of when you think of networking. There are a variety of different options, whether you want to go to a big conference for networking, whether you want to do something more one-on-one. You can even organize coffee chats with different professionals that you're interested in. This is something that has become very common within the job search market now. So a lot of employers, a lot of alumni, a lot of professionals are used to getting requests from students and job seekers just in terms of meeting with them doing an informational interview. So these are all processes that you can go through to help build your network. I think, Chris, it was you that mentioned that the majority of your jobs were never posted. I read a report recently that said that I think it was out of 100% of the jobs that are actually available in Canada, only 30% of them are actually posted online. What that means is 70% of them are normally filled through things like referrals. It's filled through your network. From an employer's perspective, why post a job and go through 600 applications when you can just go to your best employees and ask them for a referral of who would be a really great candidate for that position? Not only is it less effort, less resources, less time, and a lot less risk as well. So think of it that way when you're applying for jobs or when you're looking for opportunities, and also take a look at internships, right? Not just internships necessarily through York, but internships are a really hot word right now. So if you go on job search websites, you'll see a lot of things like internships and co-ops. Just make sure that they're paid if they're not associated with a program. And as long as you're getting the experience, they should be a really great opportunity for you as well.